Howdy and welcome into this week's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you are here, whether you're a new listener or a returning listener. I'm glad you're not tired of hearing me talk after about the 12-second mark that we just hit. Thanks for being here. Father Anthony and I had a blast recording this week's show. We talked about a couple of things. We talked about cancel culture and how there's some good things in it and there's some terrible things in it. What else did we talk about? We talked about holy people not knowing what's going on. And we talked about when you try to improve things and things only get worse. It's a great show. I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you do, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit the like button, leave a comment of your favorite part. All the things. Hit that subscribe button. Really helps us out. Enjoy the show. Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll. That is Father Anthony Scaramucci Sciarappa. How are you, Padre?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Taylor?
I'm doing great. It's lovely for me because privately I call you Anthony, and the one word that you don't want me to call you is Padre, but that's much more socially acceptable publicly. So,
yes.
Again, getting into you and I's private life together that we talked about last month.
Right, exactly.
Very different between the public and the private persona, but I'm glad to be here today. We have recorded lots and lots of things over the last few days, so both of us were like, what are we going to talk about? And
Yes.
It was one of those, like, you know how, like, you're a dummy and I'm a dummy, but then God can show up and do good things in us. That's what we're hoping for today, because we had nothing planned until about 30 minutes before recording, and then it all just came to my head. I'm like, I think we actually have a really good show today. I think it's going to go very well. Oh, man. So how I want to start is to bring back a very old segment that we haven't done in quite some time. And it's called, we haven't opened for it, but I don't know if I can find it. It's been that many years. So we'll see if we can find it later. But it's called Who Was Paying Attention at Mass? And the segment is essentially around the idea that, like, we all go to Mass, we all hear the readings, or I mean, at least we used to all go to Mass, but it's like, so remember back in those years, whatever, we used to go to church and those sorts of things, but like remembering how, like, you could go to lunch and somebody be like, oh yeah, that gospel reading was really cool, and you're like, I have no idea. Like, I
don't remember it at all.
I don't remember it. I don't remember what Father said. I remember when he messed up, but that's the only thing that I remember about Mass. That's why this segment exists, is to look at a reading that we all heard pretty recently, a couple weeks ago in this case. We're a little late to the game because this may or may not be due to Taylor being behind on his devotional. So I did my devotional for this reading a few days late. So it didn't make last week's show.
Still counts.
I mean, whatever. The whole God's outside of time. It seems to be an excuse every other Catholic uses, so why can't I?
Yeah, sure.
Why didn't you pray for me? Well, God's outside of time. No, you forgot. You're mean. But so there was a Sunday reading a couple weeks ago that I would imagine you preached on. It's the whole calling of Samuel thing, where there's Eli and there's Samuel and there's a mystery man that keeps bothering them. You remember this?
Yes.
All right. So before we get into my insights are always a little strange, I think. Sometimes helpful, but always strange.
Peculiar.
Peculiar. That's a very fancy word for you today.
Yes.
As you said it, I pictured you like drinking a martini with your pinky out. Peculiar.
I had to focus really hard to say the word the right way. I'm not gonna lie.
Peculiar.
Peculiar. You're peculiar.
So I would imagine you preached on this a couple of weeks ago. Do you ever remember your homilies? Like, is that something that you recall?
I do. Not all the time. Sometimes. This one I do remember because the call of Samuel. It's like it's a classic. After all, I'm sure everybody who listened or saw or was at Mass heard the hymn. Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord?
A, B,
I
C, D, E, F, G, H.
So maybe for that reason, it stuck in my head. Yeah.
Okay, so other than, I really hope that's not what you did for your homily, because that would
No,
make
I did not do that.
People are like, I'm going to the Protestant church. I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you preach about?
Oh, what did I preach on? I preached on God calling us to be Christians. Because a lot of times...
Fascinating.
I know. But that's the thing. That we are afraid of God's call. that he's going to ask us to do something crazy. So I compared what was going on with Elijah, what was going on in the gospel, which was the whole Jesus saying, "Come and see," and that if we actually listen to the call to be Christians, we actually wouldn't have a problem with the amount of priests that we have. I told the story about a bishop who ministers kind of on the border of China and India. Basically, he
I had
started his
no idea
diocese.
those countries bordered each other till just now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of in that area. But this bishop started off his diocese like 40 years ago with just him and a lay evangelist literally walking from village to village. And now they have 100,000 Catholics and like 20 priests. But because every one of those Catholics knows their mission to spread the gospel, to teach the kerygma, because everyone knows that the faith is alive and well there. And vocations, of course, will come from that. So it's like, why are we freaking out about the lack of priests? This place can do it. We need to do it. And the way to do that is to accept our call in being Christians. And then I talked about, what does that mean? It means, first of all, come and see. Like, you can't spread the love of Jesus Christ if you don't know the guy. And that's what Christ asks us to do first, and then he sends us out. That was the gist of it.
I heard almost none of that after you mentioned the China and India thing. I've just been staring at this map. You know how big China is?
Yeah, man. It's like real big.
So like I always thought that like, like I knew like the right side of India, like the Nepal and the Bangladesh. I figured they were the buffer. But then like it does touch India. You know what also touches like Pakistan and Afghanistan? Like how what? I've never picked like I've thought about the whole Russia thing because I knew Russia was big, and it's like, is Russia Asian or are they European? Like they look European, but they're more over like China, and they look really different than Chinese people. But then like you also have Chinese people who are like next door neighbors with like Pakistan, and that blew my mind. That's what I think whenever people are giving homilies. These are the things that I get stuck on.
It's a shame. We could have done a whole segment on what countries does Taylor think are big.
We might. I just learned that Tajikistan is a country. I have never heard of that place.
Wow.
Tajikistan? I knew it.
Do you have any more fun facts for your listeners?
Kyrgyzstan is harder to say than peculiar.
Yes, those are both difficult things
ridiculous. To say. Kazakhstan's the greatest country in the world. I don't know if you've heard that. China's very big. Okay, back to Jesus. So yeah, you were talking about like the call to be Christian.
Yes.
But you do realize that no one in this story was Christian, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So,
but
so how do you make that connection?
Because God's call is, you're driving me crazy. It's like, well, there were no Christians in the Old Testament. Guess we can't talk about that at Mass.
You know what we can talk about, though?
What?
Pakistan and China's border. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. That's the content.
So here's what I was thinking. This is again, how I focus during homilies. But here's how the story starts. Okay, during the time young Samuel was minister to the Lord under Eli, the word of God was scarce and vision infrequent. So the word of God being scarce, like that this might be my new favorite Bible verse. Like I know this, right? God, will you talk to me? And he's like, no, because I'm the God of the Old Testament and you're a Christian and we're not the same.
Yes.
Vision was infrequent. I think that probably means spiritual visions, but I also it'd just be funny too if it was like there was an excess of blind people during this era.
Well, they just didn't have like glasses back then, so yeah.
They would be called legally blonde or blind,
exactly,
or whatever. All right. One day, Eli was asleep in his usual place. His head had lately grown so weak that he could not see. So again, we're getting into like I think it means spiritual vision, but the next line is talking about an old dude that can't see. So it's very confusing. The lamp of God was not yet extinguished. That's a random line. I'm sure that has some deeper meaning for those of us who are Jewish, which is neither of us. But the lamp of God was not yet extinguished. Like his nightlight was on.
I'm gonna make so this is before the temple was built, but there was a little temple at Shiloh, I believe. This is where this is occurring, and I'm assuming that's to try to tell you what time of night it is. So they probably lit like a vigil candle or a lamp, and it hadn't gone out yet because they're not going to change it in the middle of the night. That's my guess.
So it's just like when my kids go to sleep, I leave the bathroom light on so that they're not scared. But right when they go to sleep, I'm like, all right, electricity bill, and I turn that off.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's what that is.
It's that time of night. It's
so that
an hour after my kids have gone.
So
to
that
bed.
Eli and Samuel didn't get scared at night. They needed their nightlight.
Well, I mean, they have
which is a lamp. Of
they
God.
have strange men talking to them, so that I would.
Yeah,
be scared
exactly.
too.
Yeah, keep the lights on. That's spooky.
So the lamp of God was not yet extinguished, and Samuel was sleeping in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was. So he's sleeping in the temple. So this would be like for us, like sleeping in adoration or falling asleep in church, which is great.
This is what every little kid just assumes, that the priests actually sleep in the church.
Right.
But this actually worked that way in this part of the Old Testament. They were literally sleeping in quote unquote church.
What I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We'll come back to like just going through the story chronologically. But this part is what kind of one of the craziest things is that I had never noticed in reading this before, that at this point, I just assumed that the dude sleeping in the temple of God was a follower of God. And at this point, he was not. Like, he's living with Eli so that Eli can like train him up to be a good dude. But at the same time, like it says later on that Samuel did not yet know the Lord. Like he did not have a relationship with God. He wasn't a practicing Jew. Like he wasn't a person who had faith. Like, so I find it strange, first of all, that he's sleeping in the temple. Like, it's just a normal room to him, right? Like, he's like, old guy's sleeping in there and he snores, so I'm going to come in here where it's quiet and there's a lamp.
Well, it might not be even that. I mean, you could say that there's a lot of Christians who might not, quote unquote, know the Lord. So because he's growing up in this culture, he probably has at least a cultural Judaism, if you will, a nominal Judaism, but he doesn't have, there's not that personal relationship yet.
Right. So while he's sleeping next to, where the Jews like believe that God literally resided, right? Like in the Ark of the Covenant. The Lord called to Samuel, who answered, "Here I am," which is, led to your favorite song. And then we all kind of know the story here. We can. He's like, he goes to Eli, and then Eli starts playing the game that we all played in junior high. I didn't call you,
Yeah.
And he goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and he does this 3 times, and then finally, on the third time, as we get into it, Samuel did not recognize the Lord, since the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. Then the Lord called Samuel again for the 3rd time. He gets up, goes to Eli. He said, "Here I am. You called me." And like my every time that I think about this, I think about like being a parent. Like, my son has been having nightmares recently, and it's like it's one of those things that like when the nightmares first started, I'm like sad for him, and like he's scared, and like we want to comfort him and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But after like 4 weeks of this, like I'm done. Like I'm just like, go to bed. Your dreams aren't real. Like, leave me and your mother alone. We're trying to sleep. like we essentially, my wife and I have to like take turns from this, and it's one of those things. Like, I'm trying to be a loving father, but at the same time, I can't if I don't sleep. So
yeah, exactly.
But like, one of the biggest points I've heard over and over again is that like, Eli was patient with him, but like the thing that stuck out to me this time wasn't how Eli was patient with him. It's that Eli, who's like the holy person, who's like in charge of this place where the temple of God is, the holy person doesn't get what's going on for 3 wake-ups. Like, it's not to the 3rd time that he's like, maybe this is something special, like from the Lord. The first time he's just like, you can imagine the first time, oh no, I didn't call you. It's probably just some sound outside, whatever.
Yeah.
The second time, like, bud, come on. Leave me alone.
Well, that fits into like the wider narrative of what's going on here. So if you look at your little gospel reading, the verses, it skips some verses. This is the fun thing that they don't put in the scripture for Sunday, but it actually happens. Do you remember what God's message is to Samuel?
I didn't, but I read it today as show prep because that's the only time I read the Bible is to prepare for the show. And boy, Eli's in some trouble.
Eli's in trouble. So Eli is actually not a bad guy, but his sons are terrible priests. So he's a priest, his sons are priests. That's how it worked in the Old Testament. And his sons have just been making a mess of the priesthood, and Eli's not doing anything about it. So it's kind of the story of a man who should know better, who does know better, who isn't acting the right way. So God tells Samuel that, like, your whole family's going to die now. So that's like, here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have to tell these people they're going to die. So the fact that Eli doesn't Eli should get it, but doesn't get it, it fits into his whole character. He's not a bad guy, but he's not really living up to his own priesthood.
Well, other than that last word, boy, do I recognize that. I'm not a bad guy, but I'm not doing as good as I could be as a
Exactly.
Chris Catholic man, right? I think, yeah, that's the thing. It's like everybody's like, oh, yeah, I really see myself in Samuel. And I'm like, I always see myself in the wrong person in the scripture. I see myself way much in Eli, especially right now with the whole nightmare situation and all these things.
Mhm.
But even then, like even a flawed person in Eli,
Yeah.
it takes him a little while, but then he's like, what he tells Samuel, like, yeah, like we have the campy song that we all really deep down really like, like
Yeah.
it's really confusing to go to be like talking from you and then talking as God, but other than that, it's a really good song. I am God, I am Taylor. What are we doing? But what he tells to Samuel, like the advice that he gets him when it finally clicks for him, he says, go to sleep, and if you're recalled, reply, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening, is one of the most famous verses in the Bible, which means it's one of the most famous lines ever said.
Yes.
If through the course of human history, that sentence is one of the most popular sentences that has ever been uttered. And it's from this guy who was messed up. It's from this guy who who literally just woke up from sleep, who had wasn't doing what he was supposed to, but was still a man of God and living next to the temple of God and training this young man who didn't have a relationship with the Lord. And then Samuel does all these great things, all because of this strange night where a man was calling out to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man. But what's interesting though is like we get into like essentially what Samuel has to say. Then it gets awkward because it's like, I had taught you to listen to the Lord. What'd you hear? Well, dang it, But then, like, I like this line before he like goes into the spiel of like all the bad stuff. The Lord said to Samuel, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears it ring, which is a contrast to the first line of this whole thing, where the word of the Lord was scarce and vision infrequent, where God's like, hey, that time is over. The time of not hearing anything and the time of people not seeing who I am is over. It might get ugly for a little bit, but they gonna know I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly, yeah.
I don't know about you, but any correlations to the last 11 months or anything?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Very much so. Like, I mean, not to get super dark or anything, but this scripture passage kept coming up to me when the scandals broke again a couple years ago. Because the whole thing with Eli is that, like I said, he's not like
they weren't following safe environment in this situation.
Yeah, he's not a terrible person. He's not like, doing murders and stuff, but like his children are doing terrible things. And because he's not holding them to account, punishment rains down upon the Jewish people and upon his own household. So that kept striking me. Also, that it's a good reminder that times of seeming darkness or times where you can't hear the Lord, it feels like they're going to last forever, but they don't. And one thing we have to remind ourselves is that this isn't going to last forever. And we can ask ourselves, what are the things that I need to do to change? Like, sometimes when we say, I can't hear the Lord, he hasn't been speaking to me. And I'll ask people like, so when do you pray? Well, I say prayers. I say prayers before meals. I'm like, good. When do you go pray? And they're like, So sometimes we have to just admit that's what's going on. But even when we are praying and trying and we're not getting anything, that is not going to last forever. You have to hold on to it. It's not going to last forever.
Your meal prayers definitely apparently aren't strong enough, because I enter spiritual ecstasy in my bless us, O Lord, and these like gifts prayers every third time.
That's beautiful. That's good.
It's the only time I hear from the Lord, whenever I'm about to chow down. But I do like what you're saying, because it's like, that last line of like, things are going bad, but there's been this time of darkness, but God's going to do something new. God is going to make your ears ring. And maybe your ears are still ringing from the intro, but maybe it's like time for something. It's time for God to do something new in your life. So let's listen to him, and don't forget to pray before your meals. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. usually save this commercial for the last one, but I'm going to give it to you right here, right now, because I need your help. So last year, Forte Catholic became a nonprofit organization. We are a Catholic charity, a Catholic organization trying to share the joy of the gospel, not only through our own shows, but helping other people create their own podcasts and content, but also through live events, which are starting to happen again. All of this is my primary job, and we live off the donations of great people like you. So if you have a little bit of change in your pocket, or you'd be able to help us out monthly, we could really use your support. And if you think this is a good thing, if you're liking the show, if you like what Forte Catholic's doing, we could use your support over at fortecatholic.com/donate. Whether you can give $5 a month, $50 a month, $10 a month, $100 a month, like whatever you can do to help show your love for the show, show your love for this ministry, do some tithing, however you want to look at it, we would truly appreciate it. Help us continue to bring the joy of the gospel to as many people as we can at fortecatholic.com/donate. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is still Father Anthony Sciarappa. Sciarappa. This is a fun intro to possibly not a fun segment. I'm going to enjoy this segment thoroughly, but it could be a controversial segment.
That's what makes it fun.
That's why it's so much fun to me, because I think it might be controversial. We'll see. So 2 things happened. It's story time with Taylor, and then we're going to get Father's thoughts on this, because I've been thinking about it nonstop for days now. So I was watching the NFL playoffs this weekend for 2 whole days straight, because why not? What else is going on? And during the playoffs, one of the teams that was playing was the Browns, and they have this superstar NFL player who actually went to school at Texas A&M right down the road from me, named Myles Garrett. And last season, so in the season that has already that ended about 8 months ago, this man, who's a really good player and mostly a good dude, made a very big mistake against your Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you recall this?
Yeah, I do. Like, I don't even follow the Steelers that closely, but I saw the clip of this.
Yeah, because he assaulted a man in front of national television. So what he did was, so he's a defensive end. So his job is to tackle the quarterback. He did that, and then that wasn't the problem. It was all the stuff after. So what he did less than a year ago was he went and got the quarterback, ripped his helmet off of the quarterback, and started beating the quarterback in the head with the quarterback's helmet. Boy, like everybody watching was just like, oh no, like this is real bad. Like, this is like stuff that like you see in movies from like gangs and stuff. Like mafia people are like, we're gonna teach this guy a lesson. You should do that voice, because your family's all in the mafia.
Drop the football helmet, take the cannoli.
Your family's very nice, apparently.
Yes.
So he does this, and people at the time, people are calling for him. Like, he's a young guy. He's in his young 20s, and they're like, his career should be over. Like, he can never do that. And they were like, they went through all these things, and the commissioner was ultimately like, okay, it was early in the season. He can't play for the rest of the season or the playoffs. And that was like a big punishment. Like, the team didn't play as well because he's their best defensive player. They didn't make the playoffs last year, and him being gone was a big part of it. Okay. A big part of the punishment. He comes back this year, and I'm all for it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, he did his crime, he did his time, and lost millions of dollars because he wasn't playing, he couldn't play, like all these things. Like, it's the whole punishment fits the crime thing. Whether you think it or not, that was the punishment, and that's what happened. So I'm perfectly fine personally with him coming back this year and playing. And he came back this year and played, didn't do anything dirty on the field. Like, he went back to being like the generally good dude that we all thought he was before the incident last year, right? And then I got real upset this weekend, because what they were doing was that there's an award in the NFL called the Walter Payton Man of the Year. And it's not for best player. It's not for best quarterback or best running back. It's for like best human person, like humanitarian, doing. They're a great teammate. They're a great leader. They're a great voice for the NFL. They're doing great things in the community, like with their charities and all these sorts of things, right? Like, just a good dude. Like, J.J. Watt has won it for the Texans, or won it for the league. He's one of my favorite Texans players, who probably won't be a Texan for much longer. That's a sad thing that we won't get into. But like, after the hurricane in Houston, like he raised, like, I think, over $20 million for aid to Houstonians after so he won the award that year. So it's not just for play, it's for like stuff like that. And I don't know, 10, 11 months removed from Myles Garrett committing assault in front of our eyes, he's up for Man of the Year for his team, and it makes me so upset. And I'm going to... Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so do you know what he did this year? Like, what are the good things he did?
I don't know. They talked about it on the show, but I was fuming. I was like, are you serious? Like, like, yes, he did his time, but like, do we have to anoint him as like a great person yet? Like, let him play.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, yeah.
So I have to contrast this with another story, because essentially we're talking about cancel culture here, right? There's another story that also happened this weekend that I'm going to share, and then we'll have our conversation about where we both fall on this thing, right? So there's a Christian comedian named John Crist, who I've been a fan of for years. I saw him in person about a year ago. He's hilarious. He's viral on social media, viral on YouTube, like one of the biggest like Christian comedians. I think at the time before his kind of downfall that I'll share about in a minute, he was probably the biggest Christian comedian alive, and like selling out like I saw him in a Protestant megachurch that sat like 4,500 people, right? Like, yeah. I mean, he was doing all these big things, and then he got caught doing a bunch of things that he shouldn't have been doing, and it was all like sins of the flesh, lustful kind of things, where favors from women, all these sorts of things, like a bad thing. I totally agree that is a bad thing, right? So he had, he came out and he deleted all of his social media, wasn't posting for months. He was just gone. I forget exactly how long, but he was like gone. It was one of those things. It's like, yeah, like he did a bunch of bad things, but it's also like, it's a loss because like we all enjoyed the comedy that he brought. And then it's like this weird thing. It's like, I loved this guy and he let me down, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff that goes into that. And then maybe 2-3 months ago, he posted the first thing that he had posted in like 6 to 9 months, something like that. And he's apologizing. This is the kind of things that he's saying. This is a quote from him. My behavior has been destructive and sinful. I've sinned against God, against women, and the people who I love the most. I violated my own Christian beliefs, convictions, and values, and have hurt many people in the process. I'm sorry for the hurt and pain I've caused these women, and will continue to seek their forgiveness. I've also hurt the name of Jesus and have sought his forgiveness. Over the past few years, he privately sought and received regular professional treatment for his sexual sin and addiction struggles. So, like, it was one of those things that, like, he's been fighting this for a while. Like, even while he was committing the sins, he was trying to get help for them. He's a big public figure. He made a bunch of mistakes that a lot of public figures can fall into, people with money and fame, that sort of thing. I'm not saying what he did was right. I think what he did was terrible, but it's another one of those things where like he canceled his tour. Like he lost money. He lost tons of fans. Obviously it was his fault. The same way it was Myles Garrett's fault for doing what he did. And then he came back with this apology video, and then a few weeks later started doing the comedy thing again. Started posting videos, started doing all these kinds of things. Okay. So it's one of those things where, and then I saw a tweet actually this weekend while I'm watching the NFL, scrolling Twitter, and it was this lady, I forget her name, but she tweeted this tweet, and it went absolutely viral. And the comments were completely varied, like completely agreeing with her, completely disagreeing with her, and everywhere in between. And her tweet was something to the effect of like, y'all stop giving John Crist a platform. Like he's a monster. Like, he made a mistake. He made these mistakes. He's terrible. Stop giving him a platform. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this is where it gets messy, right? Because we have like on the one hand, I'm super mad about Myles Garrett being up for Person of the Year. Like that would be like saying John Crist is Person of the Year this year. No, he's not. He made huge mistakes. But at the same time, this lack of mercy from the Christian community that I saw to be able to forgive this man, two things. Complete lack of forgiveness and mercy within the Christian community, because that's where he lives and works and does all of this stuff, right? But at the same time, and on the other hand, it was like, this is the reason that Christians don't open up to each other about their sins. Yes, we as Catholics go to a priest to confess our sins, but that's not the only thing that verse of the Bible means. Confess your sins to one another. Like, we should have people that we can confide in and be like, hey man, I need help with this. Can you help me? And this is the reason people don't do it. Because people open up that they're a sinner, which everyone is, and people are like, he should never do anything in the public again. And it's like, so I've been wrestling with this. It's like, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere between he's the man of the year, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous, and he should never speak again, which is also ridiculous.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about them, and I don't know how many of them are clear. But of course, for me, this sort of thing strikes very close to home because I'm a priest, and it's we definitely know cases that are very cut and dry. This priest has done these horrible things. You don't get to be a priest publicly anymore. Period. Right. But there's also um, cases and people I've known where it's not quite as cut and dry. It's not the sins aren't as horrible, but they're still bad. It's like it's and the difficult thing. We like to write people off as monsters, but the more terrifying and complicated thing is that they're not. The more terrifying and complicated thing is that they're human beings. Um, and if not for the grace of God, if not for other circumstances, there's a very good chance any of us could fall into that. Um, but I wonder, like, if I had done what John Chris had done, do I get to work in a parish anymore?
Not till you
Probably
got
not.
old.
Yeah, probably not though, right?
Yeah.
And how many people would agree with that? Probably a lot. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying it becomes different when depending on the position that you hold. That there's I forgive sins of infidelity and sexual misconduct all the time in the confessional. And these people, they don't have to stop being uh, parents. They don't have to quit their jobs, nor would we expect them to. We expect them to do make reparations, all this sort of thing. But if a priest does that, you're done. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I can see it on both sides. It's very difficult. So when you have someone like John Christ, who very much so, because of the path he has chosen in life, uh, is going to be held up as a image of Christianity, um, is being forgiven and being allowed to still be a public figure the same thing?
No,
Like I don't
yeah, I don't think they are.
I don't think they're the same thing either. I'm just bringing these up. I don't have answers to this stuff. I really don't, but it's stuff I think about a lot. Um, it's tough because that's kind of his job. That's what he knows how to do. That's what he's good at. So you know, it's one thing to say. The one advantage a priest might have is that a priest screws up, he can't do public ministry anymore. But unless it's really really bad, the church still has to support him. So he might not do public ministry anymore. He'll go to a retirement house. He'll still be fed, sheltered, clothed, that sort of thing. Um, but if you are a lay person and this happens, or if you're not Catholic and this happens, and the sin affects like your livelihood, um, do we just say, "Well, I'm sorry, you gotta find another job"? Um, and part of me thinks maybe, and part of me thinks maybe not. It's tough. Um, the one thing I do wish is that we treated these problems and looked at them as complicated as they actually are. I think it's very easy to fire off a tweet. It's very easy to say, cancel this person's life. But the deeper thing that you're getting at, and I think this is actually very important because this brings it down to everyone's level. We do, as Christians, see some sins as okay and some sins as not okay. And I don't mean mortal and venial. There are some sins that are venial that people think are not okay, and some sins that are mortal that people think are okay. But this is this weird subjective thing we've placed on it, where, okay, you can admit to doing this or that. You can be forgiven for this or that. But this other thing, no. And that's a very dangerous place to be. Not that I think everyone should, get up in the middle of church and be like, I committed the sin of gluttony. I ate 5,000 Oreos. Please forgive
You're
me.
we
that's
know,
not...
Todd. We can't see around you.
Right? We don't care because those are the peanut butter Oreos. No one likes those. We don't do that. But if we've created a culture where sins need to be kept hidden, all that does is make sinfulness all the more prevalent. The one thing that is an antidote to sin is truth and light. That's one of the things about the confessional. You get both. You get the privacy, but you also, by saying your sins, bring them out into the light, and they lose their power, and Christ forgives them. And while not every sin that you commit, you need to feel comfortable telling everyone. If there's this culture of secrecy and shame, that's not healthy for the church. That's not healthy for people. That's bad. And I do think the overall kind of cancel culture um, really adds to that, and that is dangerous. Um, so I'm glad you brought up these two examples because they're both complicated.
Yeah,
right?
they are. And
Yeah.
like I think one of the things that like you were talking about, like, if you made similar mistakes as John Christ, would you be a priest again? And like you were like, I don't have an opinion on it. Like I do have an opinion on it. Like maybe you don't want to, or you don't have to, you don't have, like, whatever. But like maybe I'm allowed to because I'm not a priest, right? Like
Mhm.
it's one of those things where one, it's not my call, but if it was my call,
Yeah.
like I would want you to continue in ministry at some point because of one thing, because I know that you have a good heart. Like that's the primary thing, right? And if I was
Right.
your superior, your bishop, or whoever is making these decisions, like hopefully they would have people that know you and be like, yes, he's a sinner. Like most of the people close to him know his biggest weaknesses. We know his biggest strengths. Like we know all of these things. Am I surprised that he messed up? No. Am I surprised that he's done great things? No. Like all of these, like the people
Right.
close to you. So it's like if you messed up, I would know that you deep down are a good person because I have a relationship with you. I've known you for a long time. And there should, like, obviously, the whole punishment fits the crime thing. Like if your sins were around stealing money, like, okay, you could still be a priest. You're just not going to be around money. And like I know situations where that has happened in parishes that I've worked in. Like certain people can't be around the money anymore, but they can still work here and they can still do good things after they were suspended or whatever, right? If it's sexual misconduct, that sort of thing, it's like I think at some point you should be, depending on this, at some point punishment fitting the crime, you should be able to return to be a priest, just not put in situation. You wouldn't help with youth ministry, you wouldn't help with college ministry anymore. That sort of thing, right? Um, and like the thing that scared me and made me the most sad, I think, about people not the most sad, it was that I saw people not forgetting him right when the news came out. Like the news came out, like my first thing was like, man, like another one of like my heroes, somebody that I'm a fan of, went down. Like I've like I feel like my entire adult life is watching that happen, and it's sad,
Yeah.
right? So I was sad for me. I was sad for him. I was like, dang it! Like I don't know him like I know you, but like from what I know, I think he's a good dude, and I think he made a string of bad mistakes from an addiction that most people have, you know, and so like my fear was that people wouldn't forgive him, and that what he would do. Here's exactly what I thought would happen, whatever, a year ago, 10 months ago, whenever this broke, was like, he's going to have to become like a bad comedian now because the Christian churches aren't going to welcome him back. He's not going to be able to do his Christian material. So he's going to have to go and do worse stuff because he's still
Yeah.
talented as a comedian. He's still good on a stage. But if he's not allowed to be do Christian material because Christians don't want to hear it, it's going to like not having mercy actually drives people away from the church because the church is supposed to be a place where you receive mercy. And
Yeah, but I agree with that. But just to make things complicated again, you were talking about punishment fits the crime. What happens when the crime is you've ruined people's lives? Like, if we're going by justice, then I'm sorry, your life gets ruined too. You don't get to do the comedy thing anymore. This is why it's so tough.
Right.
Like, and it's tough because, like, we've been talking about him or hypothetical people, and it's also tough because you don't want to forget the people who have been wounded by this as well, right? So part of us dealing with that is, yeah, okay. So you gave the example that in your life growing up as Christian, and anyone in our age category has just seen this time and time and time and time again, right? Especially if you've been in ministry, you've seen this time and time again. And so even when someone you don't know personally has this fall from grace, has these sins, it hits you and it hurts you, right? And so there are some people who have been hurt personally by one person, and when they see that happen again, it's like they get hurt again,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then them knowing that their lives have been wounded in such a way, oh, but this person go and live his life. Like, I get the anger and the frustration and the feeling of a lack of justice. That all makes it all the more difficult.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard, and I totally get what you're saying. And it's just one of those things that, like, yeah, we have to somehow find a balance of justice and mercy in these complicated situations. And I feel too often we're leaning on the justice and not the mercy, right?
And I think it's the important thing is, I know the segment's going long, but it's important to have these difficult conversations, because if we ignore it and if we just post stuff, that's not helpful. But having conversations like this and thinking about these things and praying about these things, that's how we get to a better understanding of what that balance is.
Right. Like, we didn't just have a perfect conversation about this. It's very messy. We
talked
for 19 minutes and it wasn't perfect, but you know what it was better than? 160 characters in a tweet with no context. So here's how I want to end this. There's another person that I didn't bring up yet because I wanted to end with him, and we'll end on a happy note here. There's an NBA player who I grew up watching, and I did not like him. So here we go. We come with two people that I liked that messed up, and that was weird. And now we come from a guy who I did not like as a player. His name's Delonte West, and he got popular, and he retired. Got out of the league, I don't know, 5 to 7 years ago, something like that. And was found about a year ago. There were pictures of him that went viral because he was strung out on drugs, homeless, like in this huge city. And there were pictures of him, and everybody was like, this is Delonte West, like a dude that made millions of dollars in the NBA, and now he's homeless and sitting on the side of the road. And everybody, everybody's making memes and making fun of him. And some people, so you see some people posting like, please stop doing that. This is actually sad and an addiction, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's, social media is going crazy on all of this, right? And then while everybody's arguing on the internet, this guy named Mark Cuban, who I also haven't typically been a huge fan of, he's the NBA owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He's also on Shark Tank. So if you're not a sports fan and you like Shark Tank, he's that Mark Cuban, multi-billionaire. While everybody else is just talking about it online, Mark Cuban, the billionaire, flies to the city, gets a car by himself. Nobody drives him. He drives around the city, around where he figured out the picture was from, to find Delonte West, go and pick him up. He brought him to rehab and paid for everything. Like, obviously the paying for everything isn't huge. I think the bigger thing for him was that he got in a car and went to go find this man because he played for the Mavericks. He said, like, I'm getting goosebumps. He's like, this guy was like, he's part of our family. He played for us. I paid him, and now he's like one of my brothers, one of my sons, whatever context you want to use, is hurting. He went and found him, put him in rehab, and we essentially, like, obviously it's, being in rehab is private, but we've gotten little glimpses where he's hanging out with his own old teammates, and he doesn't look strung out on drugs anymore. He's cleaning himself up. And this is over a few months. You see pictures. He looks better and better and better. And like, just this weekend, while all this is going on, it comes out that now he has found a job. Guess where he's working? The rehab facility where he got clean. And
wow.
It's just such a cool story of redemption, right? That started with, one, people not liking him, people kind of making fun of him when he fell because he wasn't a very likable person. But one person had mercy on him, went and found him, helped him out, and now he's got his life back on track, and he's back to helping people. So that's how I kind of want to end this, of like, mercy does good things, right? Yes, all these things are complicated, but mercy is good because God is a God of justice and of mercy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about a mistake that Father made. That'll be fun. Not as big as the ones we talked about this segment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Last week, the entire Forte Catholic crew, me and all 4 co-hosts, went and played this game on Friday night called Game of Favorites over on twitch.tv/ptony. Well, the good news is, if you missed it live, we had so much fun. The bad news is you missed out. The good news is the YouTube video will be live tomorrow, Thursday, January 28th. So head on over to youtube.com/Forte Catholic, give it a subscribe, and check out the video. We had so much fun. I'm not going to tell you who the winner was. You got to watch to find out, or just read the person's tweet because they bragged about it a ton. But head on over to YouTube. Leave a subscribe if you're listening beforehand. It'll be out tomorrow. If you're listening later, it's already out. Go check it out. We had so much fun being together with so much chaotic energy. Usually it's hard to wrangle one co-host in at a time. So having all four at the same time and another host, like, it was just a glorious mess. We had so much fun. The people watching had a blast live. So I think you'll enjoy it. YouTube.com/Forte Catholic to find the video of the entire Forte Catholic crew on Game of Favorites, hosted by Peter Schmidt. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is still Father Anthony Sciarappa. He has not been removed from the priesthood, but whatever. I did say at the end of last segment, it was a terrible transition. I said that Father Anthony made a mistake. I promise you it was not sinful. He did not make any large mistake, the grandiose to the sense that we were talking about last segment. But to me, it was a big mistake. And to you, it was a big mistake. So why don't you explain to people what you did wrong there, Padre?
So my dear sweet mother was able to get her 31-year-old child the new Xbox, and that's wonderful. But the thing is, with this new system,
I was about to say, don't you bring your mother into the mistake?
No, she's wonderful. It's amazing. She worked miracles to make this happen. And the thing is, in order to see what the Xbox can do in all of its glory, you need a screen that can work with it. And so I've got my setup actually right here behind my computer screen is my little TV screen. And I want a monitor because I don't want a small TV. I want a monitor that fits on my desk. That's where it works. But the thing is, I could not find a monitor that met all the requirements. I needed 4K and a high refresh rate. It makes things look smoother, right? And I was reading forums and looking up stuff online. And I was like, I think this is the one I want. I go to Best Buy time and time again. I say, hey, do you have something that meets these requirements? And they would say, yeah, this screen. But we don't have it in stock. I'm like, dang it. All right. It finally comes in stock, and I order it. And I'm super excited. And I set it all up. And I realize that I was duped. It had the 4K. It had the refresh rate. But you couldn't do the refresh rate and the 4K at the same time.
It's like, you can have this hot dog. You can have this ketchup. But you can't put them together.
No, you can't. You can have straight ketchup or straight up hot dog. And it's like, I don't, those are great together, but by themselves, it's so weak sauce. And I find out that there's really only one monitor that does both of these things, and it's very hard to find. And so now I'm stuck here. I'm not technically stuck. I could return it, but I'm probably not going to because that's just too much hassle.
I'm so mad at you.
And it's nicer than my old one. It is nicer than my old one. And I'm just going to probably take the hit. You
know who's taking the hit?
Who?
Your mother, who lovingly found the Xbox, which is much harder to find. She went through all this trouble to upgrade your gaming setup, and you're not doing your part. I'm so mad at you. For two reasons. Here are the two reasons that I'm super upset with you. One, you were looking for a monitor. What did I tell you to buy instead?
A TV.
Yep. I told you to buy a TV because a lot of the TVs are built for these new systems and do all the things that you want them to do. You know who has a TV that does all of that stuff? Me, because I did it correctly. You want to know the second reason that I'm mad at you?
Why?
Because on last Friday, we were both looking forward to this. I was looking forward to this for this for you. You were looking forward to it. We were like, we're going to play on Friday afternoon. You got the monitor. And you set it up and you realized it was the wrong thing. What's the first thing that I told you to do right then?
You said in so many words that I needed to send it back.
And so we started playing video games that night. And what screen were you playing on?
On my new screen.
On your new screen, the incorrect one. So I was like,
yes.
Okay, like I understand, like you want to try it. Like, it is better. It's still an upgrade, but it's not what you were trying to buy. It's not what your mom was trying to do. It's not what anybody was trying to do in your life. And I knew right then that you were settling for it and that you had given up on returning it. So what did I tell you that night? The last thing I told you was good night. The second to last thing that I told you, return the screen, put it back in the box and return it. And what screen were you playing on the next day? Same stupid
one.
Screen. I'm so upset with you. You're so
it's
close.
Too complicated. Like who returns stuff from Amazon? That's just how
anyone
do I even
can.
do that?
It's so easy. You literally just bring the box to UPS and they take care of it. You don't have to do anything.
I don't know. It didn't come in an Amazon box. It just came in a in its regular box.
You don't have to have a box. You literally give the product to UPS. They scan a barcode and
So
you're
I have
done.
to like go to a UPS store?
I'm going to come over there and punch you in the face and then go to UPS with your TV and return it.
It's just like that requires talking to people, and it's like, do I really want to do that?
I'm
it's
mad for a third
mother.
reason, because now you're just trying to make me upset. So here's the thing. I made a mistake last week with technology. Very similar mistake, where I ordered this very fancy camera that I'm using today, and I it's a little different setup when Allison is here in person. So I've done this online setup multiple times, like with you and the other co-hosts. But when Allison comes over, I've only done it once or twice. The first time I did it right. The second time I did it, I made a mistake. So we only had the first segment on video last week. We didn't have the second and third. And I felt dumb because I made the mistake, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, this never happened when I was using the dumb 720 webcam that literally looked like I was made out of grains of sand. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like that's not Taylor. That's a sandcastle that's been colored to look like Taylor. Like, if I would have just stayed with the simple setup, everything would have been fine. Just like if you would have stayed with your simple Xbox, everything would have been fine. You wouldn't have been happy, but you wouldn't have, your mom wouldn't have to go through all these hours of trouble, and you wouldn't have had to go through 12 minutes of upsetness and then give up. I'm so mad at you on your mom's behalf. I'm so mad. But like I made the mistake, I always had the content when it was the webcam. It just didn't look great. And now it's looked great. It's looked great. And now I made a mess up. I messed up. I slipped up last week, made a mistake. It was partly like I didn't know how to use the camera. It was partly the camera stopped, blah, 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 blah. And the ultimate thing was I wasn't able to put out YouTube. And that was sad for me because I know that a lot of people have been enjoying using YouTube since we started doing that a year ago. I'm frustrated, blah, 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 blah. So, and I started thinking about like how often we try to improve things and it gets better and then it gets worse. Like we fail because something's new, right? Like I failed with the new camera. You failed buying the wrong thing because you were duped. And then you realized you were duped and you just accepted it. But even though it cost a ton of money, I'm so mad. But like I feel like that a lot, like in my personal life, where I'm trying to get better. And it's so upsetting whenever I make a mistake.
Yeah, and it's tough because sometimes you just make a mistake and it's not your fault. But you feel like you run through scenarios like, oh, if I had realized this or I had done this, and sometimes you just have to let that go. I think that's your case. It's like you have to let it go. It's nobody's fault. You're not a bad person. Or in my case, there's a deep underlying pathology where you just settle for mediocrity and you just are like, whatever, I'll just take the hit. This is new and complicated. I gave it a try. Now I give up. See, there's a deeper issue than the actual TV screen or the money. There's a deeper spiritual issue going on. But I think a lot of people experience that in different aspects of their lives. They'll give something a shot. It doesn't go right the first time. And then it's like, bleh. Whereas actually improving yourself, part of that process is trying and failing and trying again. I've definitely gained more experience as a priest through trying and failing and then keep going and doing better. It's helpful when it's like my job. So like if I do a bad job at a mass, it's like, well, I have to do it again. And maybe that's the reason why I can't give up in life, but I can't give up on my TV. So maybe that's why I'm doing this.
No,
I'm not saying it's the right
thing. You can't give up on your TV because you didn't buy a TV like I told you to. You bought a monitor that doesn't work right.
Are there even 27-inch TVs that do this?
No, but you could get one I've already told you this. You could get a TV that's 5 times as big for the exact same price that actually
But I don't want a big TV.
I don't care what you want.
It's 27 inches is perfect for my setup. It's perfect. I like my chair, my TV right there.
You could improve your life instead of settling for mediocrity, priest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but for all those who struggle with this sort of thing, I'm right there with you. So.
Well, does it help that I just continually yell at you? Because I feel like it should.
The thing is, you've played that card way too many times, so you yelling at me is just like Tuesday. So it's not gonna like if you were always super nice to me and this is the first time you yelled at me, then maybe. But now I'm like, that's just Taylor.
Here's
He's
how
a
I'm
silly
gonna end the
goose.
show. I'm very disappointed in you.
That did. I felt that a little bit. Oh.
Here's the thing. I'm disappointed in
it.
you. If your mom understood what just happened, your mom would be disappointed in you. Your dad.
If she's listening, Mom, I'm very happy with my Xbox. Thank you. You're the best mom ever.
Your dad would be so sad that you made your mom sad. Your dad would wonder why.
No, he would be upset that I wasted money.
Yes.
That's what.
Nick wouldn't be sad because he doesn't care at all.
Yeah.
All of these people are sad except for Nick. I'm very disappointed in you. And I need, like, for me, I need you to bring that back to UPS and try again. It's hurting me every time I play with you to know that you have the ability to be playing these games as well as I am, and you're not.
Well, I mean, seeing games better than I am, I don't think I can play as well as you. That's been proven.
Yeah, but it would help. And that's our show.
See.
I'm very disappointed in you. I'll be back next week. Father might come back in a month. See ya! I'm so bad! Thanks so much for listening today. I hope that you enjoyed the show. If you want to stay connected with us more than just the once a week on the podcast, you can do so on social media at Taylor Schroll, SCHROLL, on Instagram, on Twitter, then we got Forte Catholic on Facebook and Twitter. Forte Catholic on Facebook and Twitter. Taylor Schroll on Instagram and Twitter. Stay connected with us. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Peace.